My personal story can be summed up in one sentence. My father was a coal miner in northeast England. He was a World War II veteran, and he died when I was 17 years old. Combination of the two. And I'm always, taken aback when members of the United Mine Workers accuse me of a middle-class academic background. It's like, ask me, let's sit down and talk about it in more detail. My community, though, is not a physical community. It's a political community, the trade union movement. I work at the global level with unions, and that also informs strategy as well for reasons we can go into. We also have a labor workshop later, so if anybody wants to discuss this more, I recommend coming to that and give that a little general plug. Strategically, energy democracy, as far as labor is concerned, we have to take the fight inside the labor movement first and foremost. That's one side of the strategy. The other side of the strategy is to be alert and aware to what's going on outside and to listen to other movements. This is something that a lot of union people don't find easy to do. They often think that they are the bee's knees, the big cheese, and they don't have to listen to anybody else. That's changed somewhat, but it's still very much part of the culture. Now, taking the struggle inside labor, I use the phrase, we have to turn labor into a carbon battleground. It's not a perfect phrase. But the one issue which I think will change the labor movement forever is the Keystone XL pipeline. Because here it was put forward that here you have unions that were part of the Blue-Green Alliance, had talked the talk a little bit about climate change during the early days of Obama, were then put in front of them was a project labor agreement with TransCanada Corporation to build a pipeline. And it was obviously not just about one pipeline. It was a strategic alliance between the building trades, or the leadership of the building trades, and the American Petroleum Institute and fossil fuel interests writ large. And this is basically a policy failure of the Obama administration because they didn't deliver on the green jobs promises. There was a heavy recession. The members, union members in blue-collar trades pushed back against the green economy, and union leaders had nothing to offer. So when along comes the industry and says, here's some jobs, never mind all these green jobs, blah, blah, blah. Here's real jobs for your members, and, you better sign on. They signed on. So the question then comes, how do you handle that? Because all over the media, right until this day, it's all about jobs, and Obama's losing blue-collar America because he's not committed to jobs and he's with the environmental extremists. So what we did was this. First of all, we got unions together, and we said there were a couple of things we needed to do. One was expose the lies about jobs. That was the first thing. So there was a study, some of you may have heard of it, which I co-authored with a couple of colleagues, Pipe Dreams, Jobs Gained, Jobs Lost in the Construction of Keystone XL. Then the key was to get unions to oppose the pipeline. This was where it got really difficult. The culture in labor is if a union's got some skin in the game, for the most part, it's best to avoid getting into that. So a nurses union or a teachers union or a transport union that is going to make a statement about a pipeline that's going to affect other union members is taking on. They're playing with fire. So when the transport unions, two of them, came out, and it was after weeks of serious, persuasive conversations, including writing out statements for them that sort of articulated a vision of not just energy democracy, but real job creation. When they opposed Keystone XL back in August 2011, all hell let loose inside the labor movement. Letters and memoranda were flying around. If you oppose this pipeline, we're going to oppose public transport refunding it on the Hill. This was unions talking to each other. In other words, getting into a war. The nurses then came out against Keystone XL. United Electrical Workers came out against Keystone XL. New York State Nurses Association. So now we have 6 unions who are opposed. But it's opened up and helped change the culture within labor. Because what we have to say in terms of narrative is the following. That all unions are energy unions, not just the ones who run or build pipelines, who are working coal-fired power stations or refineries. We all have a stake in the energy future. The future of the planet is in jeopardy, and therefore we're all energy unions. Secondly, we have to extend the notion of solidarity, not just to frontline communities, not just to indigenous communities who are fighting the fossil fuel companies, but also to future generations, to workers and farmers and ordinary people in other countries, and also to the ecosystem itself. We need to have solidarity with the planet. And that's something that trade unionists listen to, and they understand solidarity. So we work with the vocabulary of solidarity. The issue, though, is once we've moved some unions towards embracing the idea of climate justice, that we need radical action, then the question is, well, what is going to be done? We were confronted with this very, very clearly in the People's Climate March. A lot of union leaders said, yes, we need to be out there on the march with everybody else fighting for climate justice. But when their members asked them, so what are we going to do about climate change? They often went very quiet. They didn't really know what to say. So the idea then is that one of the key areas is energy. If we can't tackle the emissions, energy-related emissions, and if we include transport-related emissions on top of that, then we won't address the problem. So the key then is, how do we do that? And this takes us to the international level, because on the global stage, a lot of unions went along with the green economy framing. It's the good capitalists against the bad capitalists, the ones who want to commodify nature as opposed to the ones who want to destroy nature. So there was a balance, right, going on. There's a fight going on between a sort of more liberal kind of view of a green economy and the business as usual, like drill to the last drop or whatever, or pull out the last piece of coal. And a lot of unions in Europe felt that that was the best, particularly, they led the debate. That was the best available option, was to go along with the green capitalist model and hope that in so doing, unions would have a seat at the table and workers would be respected. Thus the demands in the talks, of the climate change talks, for a just transition for workers. And this is where the narrative question comes out. And I thought Denise really nailed it about learning from past movements. There's a narrative in the history of the trade union movement on economic democracy that we can reach into and say ownership and control of the means of production. And nothing is more important really than the production of energy right now. We need to fight for control. That resonates with a lot of unions around the world even today. But the new narrative is, it's not just public versus private, it's not just old style nationalization. We have to have real democracy, real transparency, real accountability, but we also have to do things to scale. And so what I appeal to people who do fantastic work on the local level, that look at what the International Energy Agency is saying needs to be done to stay within 2 degrees. And we all in this room know that 2 degrees is already not good enough. But if it's 2 degrees, we have to decarbonize the global economy to the level of 7% a year, every year from now until 2050. And we have to completely revolutionize the energy system in particular, but also food, agriculture, transport, retail, you name it. And the International Energy Agency, not a radical organization, said that the only way this can happen is revolutionary changes in global political economy and the methods of production and consumption. So I refer back to the sister who said this morning, who read out the platform of the Democratic Party in 1900. It may sound, in the context of 1900, it was pretty clear what needs to be done. And the context of 2015, it's pretty clear that if we're going to build a movement for energy democracy, it has to be part of a broader social movement for social transformation. If we keep our eye on that prize, I'm sure we'll be successful. But thanks again for having me here.